What is up, my YouTube family? Welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, then it's just welcome to my channel and now welcome back. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button because you will not be disappointed unless, of course, your taste level is just lacking, child. Just not up to par. You just don't know a good thing when it's on your phone or TV screen. Y'all, my entire life is off a day. So here I am on a Wednesday. And I'm getting it together. I am getting it together, okay? I'm doing my best. And I hope y'all are well out there. We have quite the story to get into today, so I'm not going to waste any time in the beginning, and let's just get into it. It's a lot to unpack. And we are discussing the case of Brian Brown Easley. Shout out to all of y'all who have served in the military, especially to the Marine whose cadence was inspired by me. I think about that all the time and it just makes me feel all warm inside. Yeah, but why you people been cutting up on the channel like they have lately? So Brian Brown Easley is born in 1983. I could not find his exact birth date, which is really strange. So Brian Brown Easley was raised in Williamstown, New Jersey, and it was pretty evident that out of all of his siblings, his mother kind of liked him the most. Now, make no mistake, she was a loving, caring mother to all of her children, but she especially dotes on her baby boy Brian, who is the youngest of 8 children. Brian is a bashful, timid child, and he has this very gentle, kind nature, so she especially holds him very close to her bosom, kind of like I be holding my son, you know? And for the most part, he and his siblings, they get along fine. He and his brother spend a lot of their time playing the PlayStation together, and Brian doesn't really make many friends outside of the home. And hell, with 7 siblings, you really don't need friends. He's very quiet in school. He does not have any behavioral problems there or at home, and makes a valiant effort with all of his studies. And after high school, Brian decides that he wants to enlist in the U.S. Marines. He spends 12 weeks training at Parris Island, and at the end of it, he comes out a much stronger, more assertive person. The Marines proved to be a very, very good decision because he was very happy. And in regard to him going to the military, his brother Calvin said, quote, "I could not believe my eyes how polished he was, how sharp, tall, and strong. I sat there in awe the entire time. He went in a little boy and they turned him into a man." Now, while at his first duty station, he makes friends amongst the soldiers that he works with, and nurturing these relationships is something that is very important to him because he didn't have friends before, not many. So it is important to him to keep the ones that he comes across. So even with the smallest infraction or causing the tiniest inconvenience, he is very apologetic, earning him the nickname Easy because of how easily he would apologize. Sorry y'all, it's bring your baby to work day. He deploys to Kuwait with his group in 2003, which really tightens the bond of their friendship circle. And in 2005, Brian is deployed to Iraq. So he was going all over the place fighting for this country. Now, the deployment to Iraq was a lot tougher on him than the one to Kuwait. He was working in this physically demanding warehouse for 17 hours a day on average, and this was for months at a time. And from this, he develops this chronic back pain that he would unfortunately permanently be plagued with. And unfortunately, this is not the only thing that changes about Brian. His friends notice once he returns later on that same year that he is not quite the same person. And these changes were not so positive. And then a couple of months after he's returned home, after spending 4 years in the military, he is honorably discharged. So he returns home to live with his mother, and home now is Jefferson, Georgia. Moving in with her, he does his best to transition back into the civilian life. He gets a job working at a warehouse, which doesn't pay him as much as he would like, but I mean, some income is better than none, right? He also enrolls in classes to explore his interest in film studies. Then he meets a young woman named Jessica Tate that he is attracted to. And Jessica has a thing for him too. The two of them begin to date. They eventually move in together and get married. And although it appears on the surface that his transition has been smooth, Brian is really struggling to acclimate to civilian life. All of the things seem to be going well for him on the surface, but his family has noticed that change in Brian that his friends had noticed once he'd come back from Iraq, and they are a bit concerned. Teasing amongst him and his siblings, especially amongst the brothers, was a regular thing. It was something that they did and had always been a thing, but now Brian can't take a little jokey joke, and he does not respond well to being teased or poked fun at. And something else that he does that strikes them as odd is taking these long walks by himself. And when I say long, I'm talking about unusually long. He was also no longer that super apologetic young man. Child, not even when he was very wrong. When he is made aware of how concerning his behavior has become, he explains and reveals that he was barred from re-enlisting in the Marines because he had been diagnosed with PTSD, schizophrenia, and paranoia. So instead of allowing him to re-enlist, they had to send him home with a disability check of $892 a month. And it wasn't just the mental diagnoses, it was also the back injury from over in Iraq. With this in mind, his friends and family, they moved forward, doing their best to support him and also be a bit more understanding now that they have this understanding. And 3 years into him being at home, he and Jessica find out that she's pregnant. And the family as a whole cannot be more excited. Unfortunately, though, with the good news came bad as well, because right around the same time he finds out that he's going to be a father, he finds out that his parents are both very ill. He becomes hyper-focused on helping to take care of them, spending most of his time trying to be present, take care of them, also be present for his wife through her pregnancy and the delivery of their daughter. All of the things just really take a bigger toll on him than what he can bear. So Brian decides to go and check himself into a Veterans Affairs mental hospital, which is also referred to as the VA. And when Brian checks himself into the hospital, he goes no contact with Jessica, even with them having a newborn baby at home. But he does offer her an explanation. He tells Jessica that he's done it for their safety and not because he feared that he will harm either of them. He believes that there are people after him and his presence would endanger them. And Brian stays away for a while. He makes one visit to see their daughter when she is 3 years old. After checking out of the hospital, he does continue to take care of his sick parents, and then his mother dies. Now, just the week before her death, Brian had taken off on one of those long walks. He wasn't answering phone calls. He wasn't answering text messages. Even when being made aware or them sending messages that his mother had passed away, he did not respond to those. The funeral comes and goes without anybody seeing Brian, hearing from Brian still. His family, they checked different VA hospitals to see if he had possibly checked himself back in, but he was not checked into anybody's hospital, and they do their best to try to find him, but they are not able to. So they just have to wait for him to resurface. Jessica does not hear from him for an entire year after this, but sometime before that, he does eventually make contact with his siblings and spends a total of 8 years from the point in which he'd taken off on that long walk and disappeared, living between his siblings' households, which are spread between Jersey and Georgia, and also spending periods of time as an inpatient at VA hospitals. During this time, he was really struggling with his mental health, but eventually he does sort himself out. He gets on medication, which he is regularly taking. He's keeping up with his appointments at the VA, and things seem to again be going very well for Brian. And in 2017, he goes to settle down in Marietta, Georgia, to be close to his now 8-year-old daughter with Jessica, so he can foster a relationship with her. He gets a phone for her, and every day he makes it a point to have a conversation, at least a conversation with his daughter. He would FaceTime her after school so he could help her with her homework. Sometimes they would pray before bedtime on the phone. He even talked to Jessica about surprising their daughter with a puppy. So he makes plans to set aside some of them disability coins so he can get it for her. He also starts taking computer classes at a local college. Now, he is not doing the best financially. He does not have a place to stay himself, and instead of having a place of his own, he is living out of hotels. But he is making it work, and he really prides himself on being able to help Jessica financially with their daughter from the payments he is still receiving from the military. He is being very consistent, very communicative, and again, on the surface, things appear to be going well for him. Well enough. And then on July 1st of 2017, Brian goes to check that account for his disability check, and it is not there, nor does it come. And in the days that follow, he becomes increasingly paranoid and begins to panic. He makes 9 frantic phone calls to the Veterans Crisis Line, which is a 24-hour hotline that provides crisis intervention services for veterans who are on the edge and on the verge of taking themselves out. And when July 3rd rolls around and he still has no payment from the VA, he goes down to the benefits office for some answers. Now, I ain't gonna hold you, Brian went in there irate, okay? He was loud, perturbed, if you will, so much so that they had to have the police come down, put him in handcuffs, and sit him somewhere to calm down so that they could have a respectable conversation with them. And the lady said he was, quote, extremely agitated and belligerent. Child came into the office like a hurricane. So when he got his little weather together, they removed the cuffs and the office supervisor is able to explain to him what was going on with his check. Now, unfortunately, his disability payments have been recouped to cover a debt that he had incurred when he had enrolled in school the first time and did not finish. And they tell him that they had made multiple attempts to try to contact him via letters in the mail and inform him that this was ahead if he didn't reach out and get it resolved beforehand. And because he did not respond and make arrangements to resolve it, here we are. Now, to his credit, he did move around a lot. He was between Georgia, Jersey, and all the VA mental hospitals in between. So it is very possible that they did miss him. So they set an appointment for 3 days later for him to come back on July 6th. He leaves the office, but he really wasn't trying to hear that. July 6th comes and goes, and Brian does not return down to the benefits office. And the following morning, July 7th at around 9:30 a.m., Brian Brown Easley walks into this Wells Fargo bank in Cobb County, Georgia. He calmly passes a note to the teller that states that the backpack that he is carrying has explosives. He instructs all of the customers and all but 2 of the bank's employees to exit the premises. Then he orders the 2 remaining employees to lock the doors, stay put, and remain calm. Calm cannot be on the menu when you about to blow me up, okay? And I'm so sorry. I know this is a very serious situation, but it's him looking up at her a couple of times after he passes the note. Like, you see what it say? Now, once he gets the girl seated, he then begins making phone calls. He calls 911 to inform the local authorities what is going on. And he also calls a local news station to explain his entire predicament. In a calm voice, he explains to both of them that he is not robbing the bank. This is not what this is. But he does have a demand, which is for the VA to release his $892 disability check. It was unjustly cut or reallocated, and he wanted it reinstated. That was his demand for these 2 hostages. He also wanted his story to be heard and to bring attention to things like this that happens to veterans, how so many of them have issues with the Veterans Affairs Office and they just don't do their best to help out the actual veteran, right? This is his motivation for holding up the bank, all eyes on me style. Meanwhile, he is drawing an audience outside of the bank. There are police, of course, who have come, pedestrians standing around, nosy, wanting to know what's going on. A crisis negotiator has been called in because we have a full-on hostage situation now, and different news outlets as well. He has a 38-minute conversation with a news reporter, and he tells her, quote, "I'm just going to be out on the street tomorrow. I have my hotel room tonight, and then tomorrow I have nothing. I'm just going to be out on the street, homeless, no food, no nothing." Now, the hotel he was staying in was $25 a night, which about 30 nights is $750. So that gives you an idea of how tight his money was. There were times where he would check into VA hospitals because he didn't have anywhere to stay. He would also live in non-profit housing facilities at times, and sometimes he would sleep in his car. He also tells the reporter about his love for his daughter and explains to her that he does not want to hurt anybody, but they playing with his money, and his $892 is all he really wants. Brian speaks with his daughter for a moment, telling her that he loved her and to always work hard in school. She tells him she loves him and agrees to do so. Child, apparently he was a very kind kidnapper, because when one of the hostages gets on the phone with the police so they can, check and see if everything is okay, she tells the police that everything is fine and he's being very respectful. And he even makes the comment at one point that he just might be the worst bank robber ever to have done it. He was also in there answering phone calls that was coming in from customers who didn't know what was going on. Child, they just trying to call in and make a transaction over the phone, and they get Brian, who tells them ever so politely that there was an emergency situation unfolding and they should try calling again later on that day, possibly tomorrow. He also tells his hostages, if he did choose to detonate the bomb, he would surely let them out first. He wasn't gonna take them down with him. And he constantly apologizes to them for this whole entire ordeal and tells the reporter about them that the ladies are very nice and have been very helpful and supportive during his hostage process, I guess. Child, be nice too if I thought you was finna blow me to smithereens. The paranoia is very apparent, unfortunately. He also goes on to tell the reporter that members of a secret society are following him and had tried kidnapping him on 4 different occasions. He tells her, I don't know these people. They seem to be able to track me wherever I go. They have my information. Now, at times during the calls with both the reporter and the crisis negotiator, he becomes very emotional and is crying. He'd also apologize and say he just snapped. But after 3 hours into this gentle, emotional little standoff or mental health crisis, because that's what I think it is, while Brian is still on the phone with the reporter, more armed officers are brought in along with the SWAT team, and they are getting into position all around this bank. Some of them are on top of the gas station across the street. Some of them are off in the woods, tucked off. And this does not go without Brian noticing. He tells the reporter, well, I probably won't see my daughter again. The call then ends with her, and he takes a call from the crisis negotiator outside, finally agreeing to release one of the hostages in exchange for a pack of cigarettes. And it felt like they were nearing a very peaceful de-escalation of the things. But then Officer Dennis Pont, who had just heard over the radio that they were gearing up to free one of the hostages and trade him out for some cigarettes, some Marlboro Lights, lets his SWAT commander know that he has a clean shot and asks if he should take it. The SWAT commander responds with, no, not at this time. But Dennis Pont takes the shot anyway and hits Brian Brown Easley in the head, killing him instantly. Brian was 33 years old. He had entered the bank at around 9:30 a.m. like I mentioned, and he was pronounced dead at 1:45 p.m. Now, where there are some that didn't see an issue with what Dennis Pont did because Brian was there with hostages, had threatened to blow the place up, many other people saw it differently, and they were horrified and disappointed by the officer's actions because, girl, why did you have to do that? Clearly he had mental health issues and he just didn't deserve that, especially since his serving the country directly contributed to his mental illness. It did spark a huge debate about how veterans who struggle with mental health issues are treated and how they receive minimal support from the VA. And even the lead crisis negotiator during the standoff, who was a former Marine himself, said, quote, the problem is bigger than the Cobb County Police Department and Mr. Easley. The problem is the system, how they treat retired veterans. You should get more than I appreciate your service. The VA owes these guys more. Now, his friends and family, they do give him grace as far as his remembrance by separating Brian the person from this illness that unfortunately allowed for him to be pushed to the edge. And while they acknowledge that he did not make the best decision, they feel that trained professionals should have been able to handle it better. Now, SWAT member Dennis Pont, who took the shot, later doubles down on his decision to do so. The statement he gives, there was no effort or energy being put forth toward releasing somebody. They was going to get the cigarettes. I guess things just were not moving fast enough for him. And he even acknowledges that Brian had not made any threatening movements in that moment. He just decided to put an end to it, like the standoff. Girl, that's not your call to make. I digress. Like, if you ain't feel like coming to work that day, Dennis, you should have just stayed home. Many of the other officers that had responded to this call were former military as well. And I really think Dennis was probably just frustrated with the amount of empathy and grace being shown to Brian. And wasn't he punished at all for disobeying his commander? No. A grand jury later clears him of any wrongdoing in regards to Brian Easley's death. They conclude that he acted within the law, even if his actions were unnecessary. Now, according to the rules, ability, opportunity, and jeopardy must all be present to justify a shooting. And the court said that Brian had the ability to harm the hostages that he had and others with this backpack. The opportunity was present for him to detonate it at any moment or harm them at any moment. And because of that, the hostages were very clearly in jeopardy. So there lies all 3 elements, according to them, justifying Dennis DuPont's decision in the eyes of the law. After the incident, the backpack had been removed, and just as many had believed and assumed, there was no bomb in it. Not in his backpack nor in his hotel room. Instead, inside of his backpack were a Bible, some paperwork, a couple of business cards, his room key, his social security card. Now, he did have a little small pocket machete in it. What's also interesting is that they did not call his family. Like, I ain't went to nobody's crisis negotiator school, but I feel like I would think you would think to call their family. Like, we can call somebody like a cousin, a brother, somebody can try to talk him off the ledge, and we'll have a better chance than strangers. And his brother did say in an interview after the fact that he felt like he would have been able to talk him down. We don't know that for sure, of course, but I do think it would have been worth a shot. This man was born in 1983. This was like the life of a man who lived to at least make it to 50. So much happened. Pay these Marines, okay? So they can start robbing the place. And I'm not talking about Brian. I'm talking about the 4 hoodlums in the last story. But Brian could have used a little bit more money too. Pay them. Pay all of the military people, because they deserve. Hell, even the alumni, when they get home and they're going about their civilian life, keep paying them. Now, there is a movie called Breaking about this situation. I have not seen it. I didn't watch it. Y'all know I'm not big on TV like that, so I don't plan on watching it. But I did read that his family was contacted in an effort to like accurately depict Brian. So I thought that was good, because a lot of times they leave the families out and they just, Hollywood just does what they want to do. So I'm glad they didn't do that with this particular story. And that is it for this case. Please let me know your thoughts down below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you have not. As always, I appreciate you for spending your valuable time with me, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Peace. Which will likely be Friday, because I'm still off a day. Sorry, y'all. I'm gonna get myself together or whatever. Blue, you just gonna pass gas like that? Now you crying? Did it hurt? That's crazy. Do you have to potty? You got potty? Or was your stomach hurting because you had gas? I think it's the latter. Not your stomach growling. Your stomach toe up, huh? You pooing, your belly making noise. You need to go outside, Papa? Oh, shuckers. It's okay. Now, at his first duty station, he makes a lot of friends. Oh, no. We gotta figure something out, big boy. Okay. Your hair falling out everywhere. It's just a lot going on. He enrolls in classes. Okay, no. Come on now. Which is also referred to as the VA. But he's making it work, and part of his income that he's still receiving is... Come on now. Now, he also says that... he also says the reason... He has a 38 minute. Lets his squad, child. I got the squad commander. Matter of fact, child, one of my dogs in past gas, and I'm here talking to y'all, and I feel like it's just getting in my mouth.